everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Molly,
I'm Michael.
and today we're excited to be talking about the Love is Blind reunion, as well as most recent episode in Survivor 47 and Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. For the first time, we're talking about that on the pod this week. So let's just jump right in and talk about the reunion for Love is Blind season 7. So this season, I feel like, was a whirlwind of a season, and we were hoping for some answers in the reunion, and I feel like as a whole, I don't know if we got a ton of answers, but what were your just general thoughts on the reunion first before we get into the couples?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit disappointed in the amount of answers that we got. Like, I do think that the right questions were asked for the most part, but I feel like there was a lot of kind of evading any sort of accountability or answers, or I don't know. I did end it wanting more, I think, I would say, is basically my overall thought.
Yeah, and we got a lot of those like cameos with past contestants or past people from the show that I was seeing a lot of discourse online of people
Yeah,
being like,
why?
why are they there? This is not relevant to this season. Like they've had their 15 minutes of fame already. Like they don't need it right now. Like what was
I
that
think
for?
Yeah, like I think it was cute last season when they did it, just because it was like, okay, a one-time thing. I kind of thought it would be,
Mhm.
but I think now it's like, okay, if you want to, like, I don't mind keeping up with past couples. Like, I actually like that because I think we invest so much time in watching them, and then it's like all over after one season because this isn't a show like 90 Day Fiance where there's a bunch of different versions of it where you can keep watching people over and over again. I mean, I guess you have like Perfect Match and the new show coming up that you have some people, but like do a little Christmas special or something with the couples that are still together that you're probably not going to see on other types of dating shows, obviously. So I think something like that could be cute once a year, maybe, but like leave this reunion for this season.
Yeah. I agree. Well, let's get into the couples that from this season. So, starting off with Ashley and Tyler. So, we saw them get married in the finale episode, and we weren't sure if they were still together. You said they still were, and obviously, yes, they are still together. And we see that they asked Tyler to kind of give some more clarity into his situation of having the kids, like having been a sperm donor and then having the other kids with the wife or with that friend who then divorced her wife. And there was some details there that we weren't really shown previously. And I still feel like it just basically what they were telling us is they just told everything. Tyler told Ashley everything off cameras, and that she knew the full truth and they didn't really want this to be aired. Like also I think you mentioned this last week, is that he wanted to protect those kids and not really bring them into this whole world of reality TV, into the world of just people knowing their business. But with that, then it makes it seem to us that it's a little bit sketchy that he's just like hiding this information without us knowing that side of it. So I feel like we did get a little bit of clarity there, but there could have been more answers there, and Ashley's just there like supporting him through this whole thing. It's like, yeah, like he's my man. Like I feel like there's still something like we might be missing in some part of it, but overall, like they seem to be happy. So like I want to be happy for them. And then there's all this other chatter about things going on. So I'm like, what is going on here? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is like the one segment where I was like, okay, I feel like we did get the answer we were looking for. Now, do we believe it? I think is now the question. Because,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, Ashley, I think in my mind, I'm kind of weighing like, is she covering for him because she knows if she says, oh, yeah, he didn't tell me the truth until after cameras went down, or like even worse, until the show started airing or and this came out, then that's going to look terrible for them. And even if maybe they're going through a tough time because of this new information that came out and maybe she wasn't aware of certain parts of it at the very least, then that could be embarrassing for them, especially if they then decide that they're going to stay together. Like they both know that no audience member would be supportive of that probably, and they're going to get a lot of heat, a lot of crap for it. And so, I hope that what she said is true and that he was trying to protect that family, they didn't sign up for this. The kids aren't a part of the show. Like, leave them out of it. And so he just kind of gave the very, very bare minimum and, you know, left the details out of it. I hope that's true. Because if that's true, then I fully support it. And then, you know, as long as she had all the information and made the decision based on all the information and that there was nothing big left out of it, then I can fully support them being together. And I hope they're happily ever after. If he hid this from her until after the camera stopped rolling and they were married, that's a different story. So I don't know. We're never gonna know.
Yep. We'll just have to see what their lives look like on social media, I guess. That's all we're gonna get to know now at this
Which
point.
is always honest. I
Yeah,
always believe everything I see on Instagram.
of course. We love seeing everyone's lives. That's the most honest real representation of them. But
Hashtag no filter. Yes.
what?
Hashtag no filter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get into Marissa and Ramses now. So we saw in the beginning of of the finale, obviously, the very emotional breakup there. So do you think that in the reunion that we got some more clarity on why Ramses broke things off?
Not really. No. I mean, I almost left it more confused than I was when I started watching because it really seemed like I don't know, like it just felt like she was too much for him and he decided to cut it off because of her amount of energy. I don't know. It just felt really weird. I don't know. He seemed. I don't even know how to describe it. It just it felt weird to me, and I really just left it feeling really bad for Marissa. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, same. I still feel like I didn't know really what happened there, other than that he just didn't really want to be with her. And then with Marissa's mom there, also her saying like she went to him after their breakup to like talk. I was like,
Hmm.
wow, like
Yeah,
that's
that was surprising.
yeah, that was the most shocking part of their that whole breakup
Yeah.
conversation, or like hearing about like the post breakup, because she just, I guess, was hoping to get some more answers for Marissa. But at that point, I think it's like it's done. Just let it be. Like what Nick likes to say, Nick Viall, my favorite, obviously, is he'll be like, "Well, it's over. Like you don't need a why. Like you don't like the why is just for your ego." At that point, like if this person or whoever you're dating like says like they don't want to be with you, just let them say that and then let like move on from it. Obviously, like it's nice when you can get some answers from it, especially when Marissa was thinking she was about to marry him and he was telling her all these things. But
Right.
like it's obviously hard and she has to like move on from it. So I don't think her getting these answers are gonna help her move on from it. I think she just needs to let it be in the past and realize there's someone better out there.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like she hopefully watched this season and realized she dodged a bullet to a certain degree. Like,
Mhm.
this wasn't going to work out. Clearly, a lot of her parts of her life are just don't align with his values and his thoughts. And I mean, even just like everything with her military background that is such a big part of her life, he just could never support to any degree. And I think that if there could have been some sort of common baseline understanding there, then they could have, you know, maybe had differences, like different opinions on different parts of it, and like that's fine. But like to just baseline, he does not agree with anything with the military, and you know she doesn't support certain aspects of it, but that's still a, you know, to a certain degree she doesn't regret it. And I think that was just something he was never going to be able to look past. And then obviously everything with, you know, wearing condoms and birth control and all this stuff, like, are just other factors that I think when you build all, you put all those together, it just was never going to work. And so I think as hard as that was for her and as, you know, not great as it seemed like he handled it, I do think that it was in the end a good thing that he broke it off when he did, didn't embarrass her on at the altar, which, you know, that would have been 100 times worse.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were able to hopefully both move on from this now.
Yeah. Exactly, and I know that Rams is actually gonna be on the Vile file, so maybe Nick
Oh.
will ask him some more questions, which maybe we can if there's anything important, we'll probably just make a TikTok on this, so make sure you're following us on TikTok to see if there's any juicy details we get from that, but we'll
Did
have
his
to
episode with Ashley air yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I saw a little preview that she was coming on as well, and I
Oh,
was curious if there was any answer.
yeah, no, I'm interested to see that one then too, but
Yeah.
we'll have to listen
Yeah.
and find out what they say. But yeah, so I guess they just were not meant to be. Moral of the story is good that it ended. We didn't really get much answers there on the reunion, but maybe we'll get some now. And then now with Hannah and Nick, we see that Hannah decides to stick true to her actions, not really apologizing that much to Nick, which I was surprised to see as like viewers of the season. Obviously, we saw Hannah pretty aggressive towards Nick at times and saying some things that maybe were just like not the nicest, obviously. And so I think that we were expecting her to really then apologize for that and her actions there. But it really just seemed like she was standing on what she said and was like, okay, yeah, maybe that wasn't great, but like not really feeling that remorse for it all. So, what were your thoughts on all that?
I This was to me the most shocking part of the whole reunion. Like I expected Hannah to come in such a complete 180 in her personality. Like I thought she was going to be so apologetic, so like, remorseful and laughing at herself and just, trying to come across as a completely different human being than she was on the season because this was filmed pretty recently, this reunion. Like, she knows how she came across on the show at this point. And for
Mhm.
her to stand by most of what she said and did, basically, and like, she didn't apologize to him. She basically was like, I know I'm coming across as tough, and I know that, I was mean at certain points and blah, 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 but like, there was really no apology there for. I mean, maybe by the end she did, but like, there was a long period of time where she was just kind of like, almost blaming him for accepting her behavior towards him and like was asking like why didn't you stand up for yourself and like I don't know, that is to me like the classic definition of gaslighting, like somehow making it his fault that she treated him a certain way and he let it happen. Like that is crazy
Yeah.
to me. Now I think what there was obviously some allegations that both she and then the other girls kind of supported her, saying that Nick said some certain things in the pods, and that she found a note from before the season where he was saying he wants to be the most famous person from Love Is Blind ever. Um, you know, I feel like that could be true, but then he didn't do anything during the season to make himself like a mega villain to like, get a bunch of camera time. I mean, I guess the conversation with her best friend for life, whatever her name, I forgot her name. Do you remember her name? Katie?
Katie.
Katie.
Yeah.
Um and I mean, I guess like that part was, not great for him, but like it didn't come across to me as somebody who's like trying to be like the biggest villain in Love is Blind history. So like even if he did say that, his actions didn't align with that. So
Yeah. No, that was interesting also, speaking of the girls' accusations against Nick about how he was saying about her looks, like Nick talking about Hannah's looks to the other guys and those fiancés of those guys being like, "Yeah, like stand up and say that you heard this." Like and then Steven was like, "Yeah, he said this to me." Of course Steven had a butt in there. But like I feel like that was interesting too, that those girls were kind of all ganging up against Nick, which like I feel like Nick wasn't bad guy in the situation. Like I think maybe he said something that maybe didn't come across in the best way, but Hannah also said a lot of mean things towards him. So it's obviously not like tit for tat there, but like I think in general, like it didn't have to be as much like why did you say this? Like, why aren't we asking Hannah all the things that she specifically said and like have her feel the reactions of that too? Like, it was like, it kind of felt weird in that moment.
Yeah, and I think like there's nothing wrong with like saying your initial reaction to seeing someone maybe wasn't like 100% the best ever. Like that can grow, that can change as time goes on, and as you get to know somebody's personality more, and you just see them more. And I think that that attraction, that those feelings can grow and change. And so I feel like even if he did say something like that, I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing in the world, and that doesn't mean that he wasn't genuinely trying during the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It could have been something he didn't totally mean as well. Like, it could have come across in a different way to whoever was hearing it,
Hmm.
as like versus what he meant by it. Because it did seem like he was attracted to her and all those things. Like, they were still together. So obviously he was trying to make that work. So it was interesting seeing that. But maybe hopefully Hannah will now, like, she's still, I feel bad that she is getting a lot of hate now still, like, maybe she'll make a more public apology at this point, but I don't know if she's going to want to do that and get more hate if she does say anything else about it, or just hopefully she moves on and like people can like her or not, and see what she has to share on her social media. I know she gets like a lot of humorous kind of stuff on her TikTok. So I think
Hmm.
she takes it lighthearted. Like she is lighthearted about a lot of the stuff on, at least on social media that we see, but that's not, obviously, as we're saying, it's not really what's going on in her life. So I don't know if she's gonna be open and sharing more, or we're not gonna really hear that from her. Or Nick's gonna continue being on social media. I feel like Nick's now like taking this and wanting to live with this kind of fame and being this positive viewpoint. I feel like he's probably gonna be on like Perfect Match or like those kind of shows now. Like
Oh, a
he
hundred
wants he
percent.
wants that. So we'll see. Probably see them again in the future.
I bet because I know when the Perfect Match, alleged cast came out, and there was one season seven Perfect Match unnamed that they didn't spoil because it would have spoiled the season. I bet that's Nick.
Yeah.
I think it was a male too. I would bet a lot that that's Nick. That just
Yeah.
fits perfectly to me.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see for that. But next up, we saw Brittany and Leo come out. We saw that we had them in the pods, but then they left and did not go to Mexico, and they had their own trip. Then they broke off their engagement. Then, and they come out and saying they were best friends and like they're still close, but they knew that was not meant to be in a relationship sense. So it seemed like they had pretty positive things, like, or they were both like seeming to be good people. Like, and in the pods, I feel like obviously you didn't want them to, or I didn't want to see them together, but like now seeing them as friends, I'm like happy that they're actually friends and like getting along, and that's good to see. And Leo came out and I feel like was really apologetic there towards Hannah as well, which was nice to see. And he really did own up to his actions and knows that he really was not the greatest in the pods there. And so I appreciated seeing that. And I'm happy to see Brittany is also happy. She said she's with someone now. So seems like they've both grown and learned from this experience, which was good to see. So what were your thoughts on them? Did your opinions change at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think they seem really good as friends, and I think
Yeah.
that's where their relationship is going to stay, it seems like. But I'm glad to know that they are friends, you know? I mean, look, Leo came across not the best on the show. Probably, I mean, honestly, Brittany didn't either for different reasons, but I think that I'm glad that they both at least got a good friendship out of it, and hopefully a fun trip to Miami. And I'm glad that their story ended where it did. Like you said, I think that that was the right time for them to to stop filming, because obviously they would have never made it to the altar. So, I mean, not that most of the other couples did either that they did follow, but at the time it seemed like more of them had potential. I mean, like I feel like when we started covering the pod episodes mostly, there were a lot of couples that we felt like had a potential to work out. I mean, so from what we saw at least.
Yeah.
So it certainly seemed like they picked the right couples to keep following there, but it was good to get an update from them.
Yeah. For sure. So next let's get into Monica and Steven. So Steven gives up some sort of explanation more into what was going on with his sleep study and this girl that he had been sending some explicit messages with during this study, and then didn't talk said he doesn't talk to her after that happened. And Monica was just like, "What are you even saying here?" Like, but like they had previously texted and never met. It was all a little bit of random stories. I feel like come together, and I didn't really know what to believe from Steven's point of view. But what were your thoughts overall on that explanation and just seeing them back in the same room?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. I guess I believe that I don't have any other evidence.
Yeah,
But I I think that where he was probably right is when he said, "Look, nobody cares to hear my side of the story. Nobody wants to believe me that, it I'm gonna be the bad guy no matter what I say here, and so I might as well not say much at all." And I mean, look, it's probably true. I wasn't really looking to see, oh, how is he gonna be the victim here, or how is he gonna, be in the right in this? He's not. No matter what he says, he's not gonna be in the right. She saw the messages; they were inappropriate. It was clear as day. No matter the reasoning of why he sent them, who they were to, whatever, it really doesn't matter. Like their relationship was over at that point, no matter what the explanation was. So I mean, he's probably right, but I don't know. None of his explanation made me like him more or less. It just kind of, was okay. I guess these are the details.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel bad for Monica still. I feel like she got the short end of the stick there with like having to deal with Steven in that way. But hopefully she'll get to hopefully find love with the right person now. I mean, I think she does.
I think he was in
She
the audience,
obviously what?
right? I think she had a boyfriend in the audience.
Oh, she did. Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot her. She said that. Oh, okay, great.
I don't know if she said it on the show or maybe afterwards, maybe like on social media or something. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think she had a boyfriend in the audience.
Okay, well that's good then. I feel like that's good. Then like she probably was like, I don't want to talk to you when we're
But I think like this is an example of where I wish this season aired quicker after it filmed, because I think the problem is we're a year out now from all of this happening, so they're all pretty much over it. And I
yeah,
think that we would have gotten much more like raw emotions if this was like, I mean, like, look at Love Island reunion. Like, that filmed so quickly. And so, like,
yeah,
with Nicole and Kendall, like, there were such raw emotions from Nicole about that because that breakup was happening in that moment, at that time. They were going through all of this. And I think that if Monica and Steven had filmed this reunion 6, 8 months ago, I think that we would have gotten much more raw emotions from Monica, probably, and probably from Steven too. Like, I just think that it's probably the same with like Alex and Tim that we're going to talk about. Like, I just think at this point they're all kind of over this, and that's kind of the problem. Is like we're not seeing those confrontations that we probably would have seen if this was a lot sooner after this all happened.
yeah. I agree. Well, maybe we'll get that in the future seasons, but for right now,
Probably not.
they're not. They're showing us
Season
these
8
a
already.
year later.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the way Netflix rolls, apparently.
I know.
But so yeah, well, speaking of Tim and Alex, so we saw that they shared a little bit more context into the argument, and Alex was sharing how she was just really exhausted. She was working from like her night job that day, and like all the stuff that like was just making her really tired, that she needed to take that nap. She'd already was filming for 4 or 5 hours, that she didn't think that sleeping was gonna end that relationship. But then it just caused some more arguments there. So, do you think that we have a little bit of a better understanding also of seeing Tim, like why he called things off there, or overall, like in their relationship?
Um, no,
Yeah.
not really again. I mean, that's the problem. Like I said, to start this off, like I feel like I just didn't get a lot of the answers. I mean, I think where it feels like there's a discrepancy here is that I think in Alex's mind, she, was working all day, then she went straight to film. And then she was about to go work again. Like, she just needed that time to, like, nap for an hour or two just to kind of, like, filming is a long process. Like, I think people just kind of think, like, oh, these cameras come up and you're just kind of living your life. And, ideally that's what it should be, but it's really not. Like, there's a lot of setup that goes into filming. There's a lot of, it's a long hours. And to have another job on top of it, I think, can be a little crazy, I'm sure. So I can completely understand that. I guess where Tim, from his perspective, it sounds like he feels like she went out the night before, and that was part of why she was, out for so long and didn't get to sleep before. And it felt like, from his perspective, I guess, like he was already having some doubts, like before he met her family, and he wanted to, try his hardest and go through with it and give it the best shot. But from her perspective, she would rather he not done it at all if he was already having those doubts and not bring her family into it, her parents. So I guess that's kind of where there's like just different discrepancies and different points of view on these issues, and I can see that. I i think I tend to land more on Alex's side just because a lot of Tim's perspective, it feels like, is maybe things that he's kind of more internalizing and not necessarily like fully being transparent with her. And so she's kind of left shell shocked when he just kind of drops these things about not being happy. So I don't know. I can see his side, I guess, maybe a little bit more than I did before the reunion, but I still think I find myself landing more on Alex's side.
Yeah, I agree. And since it's been a year, also, it's like they've kind of tried to move on from this whole stuff. So it's like we're not getting as much of that raw emotion as you were saying. But next, end on a happier note here with Taylor and Garrett. With they're still together and they came out. We see obviously Garrett's glow up, which they tried to Nick was saying all the Taylor Swift like
Mm-hmm.
sayings, and that was funny. Of like, this is Taylor's version.
Taylor's version.
What?
Yeah, I was saying, yeah, Garrett Taylor's version. That
Yeah,
was cute.
so that was funny there. But I think obviously like we knew that they were a pretty strong couple, like could see them staying together. So I'm happy to see them together. The one shocking part of what happened in the reunion though is that we hear is that they're moving to DC and not going to San Diego, and that they had been living in Fredericksburg where Nick Garrett's family is. So Garrett didn't want to move that far away from family, and Taylor agrees that like now that like she's married to Garrett, they're a partnership there, that they're doing what's best for them. It doesn't mean that she needs to be going to San Diego either. So they came to that compromise and are moving to DC together. So what were your thoughts on that and their whole conversation on the reunion?
Yeah, super happy for them. Seems like things are going great. I think that they're going to be the one, like, long-term success story coming out of this season that everybody can get behind. And I mean, hopefully Ashley and Tyler continue to be together as well, but I feel like the audience isn't quite as behind them necessarily for obvious reasons as much as they might be with Garrett and Taylor. So, yeah, I feel like they're, the classic Jade and Tanner of of Love Is Blind season 7, the happy non-dramatic couple, and I think it's great. I'm glad to see them moving to DC, and I think that that's exciting that they'll be with their family, and I'm hoping all the success for them.
Yeah. I'm happy for them too. So, well, I already follow Taylor now on Instagram and TikTok because I feel like her content's been really good. So I'm excited to keep up with their lives and hopefully they continue to thrive as they seem to be.
Yes. Well, should we move on to Survivor then?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, well, let's put Love is Blind season 7 to bed, and moving on to Survivor 47, episode 7, or episode several, if you will. Now we start off coming out of last week's tribal council where Annika went home. And now Andy knows that Sam had thrown his name out as the decoy vote last week. So, do you think that this will get him to turn against Gada when he gets the opportunity? Now that he knows this information, it seems like his wheels are turning a little bit. So, do you think that he will actually make the move to strike when that opportunity arises?
I think so. I think there's nothing you can rule out at this time in Survivor. Like, especially with Andy knowing that Sam had thrown his name out, like thinking that they were going to be strong together. If he already knew that Sam would turn on him, then if that information was out there for him to know that, I think Andy wouldn't be able to fully trust Sam again. So I think he would take the opportunity.
I agree. I think they're setting this up for a reason. I
Yeah.
do think that this is going to pay dividends once we actually get a normal merged tribal council and they're actually vulnerable to be voted out. I think that at some point this is going to come to a head. Whether he's actually successful at it or not will be a different story. But I absolutely think that at some point he's going to give it a shot. And I think he should. I think that that's the right move. And I hope that his eyes have opened and that they're not going to be able to manipulate him back into, going trusting them fully again. And I think Andy's a smart player. Like I think that he's gonna see through that if they do try it. So we will see. But going back to this week's episode, thoughts on this split tribe twist that we had. So we've seen this before. Sometimes both sides have to go to tribal council. In this case, they did not. Only one did. But we did get now the tribes or the teams, I guess we'll say, that were split were very interesting because we had the yellow team was three Gadas and three Lavos, and the blue team ended up being all five Tukus plus Rachel. So before we get into the logistics of what all happened there, what are your thoughts on this twist just in general?
I think it's interesting in general. I think it obviously isn't fair in that sense, like especially with seeing how it turned out. Like it's not it's always it feels like someone who goes home in this situation is someone maybe who you wouldn't want to go home or you don't expect to be going home at this point in the game, which isn't that great, but it also does make for good TV in that sense of like seeing, okay, this is kind of crazy. Like, what's going to happen here? Their odds are a lot smaller here to get voted out now, or a lot higher of a chance to get voted out than if we just did the full merge again. But to do the split and have only half being safe, I think at this point in the game, it's okay. But like, I don't want them to be doing this again. Like, I think this time, like, it's like hopefully this is the last one. But also then sometimes it makes some of your favorites go home. Like that's what like I don't like about it because I'm like, oh, like I want them to be safe and I want them to make it through another week. And sometimes that won't be the case. So yeah, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always like, I guess I'm a bit of a Survivor purist in this sense. Like, I wish that the show just trusted their cast to play a normal game of Survivor and have it be entertaining. And it usually is when they just like let things be. Like let this tribe settle. Like they just merged. Let them have at least one just like I just wish that at least this was after the jury phase because like whoever gets voted out right here, it's like right before the jury, and it's just such sad. Like they had to do this on a twist. It's like I really felt for. I mean, I guess not to spoil who goes home quite yet. Well, I guess if you're listening to this, you probably know, but like it's just it. it just sucks for the whoever goes out here. And so I just wish that sometimes that they Survivor would just kind of let things play out a little bit more normally and not try to have all of these weird tribals. And last week I was so happy that it was a normal vote. And I guess like I'm glad at least we didn't get two wacky ones like that in a row. Like last week was pretty normal, you know, even though technically it wasn't the merch yet, but basically was. So now we got another wacky one. So, not ideal, but I guess could have been worse. It played out pretty interestingly as it was. But Kyle won individual immunity, and he lasted the longest for of his team. The blue team ended up losing, and they ended up going to tribal council. During the yellow team's reward, there is an advantage that is hidden, and Saul ends up finding this advantage. And he has to actually, it's not an advantage for him. He has to give it to somebody from the losing tribe or losing team who will get to choose between one of two rewards. So they could either choose a vote blocker, or which blocks someone else's vote, or safety without power, which means they are safe for this tribal, but they end up having to leave tribal before even getting to see who goes home. So, which do you think you would choose if you had that decision to make?
I think I would choose the safety without power just because you know that you're safe in that situation. The vote blocker still wouldn't totally guarantee your spot for the next week if you didn't use the right way, or like you don't know always who's voting which way. So I think that safety without power is the right move there. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the only reason why you would choose the vote blocker instead is, I guess, just if you are like 100% confident that you're not going to be the one going home and there is a very specific person that you feel like you need to get out at that tribal in order for your game to have, have a better path forward in the long run, then you can use that to where you don't need as many votes to get the vote to go your way. So I think 9 times out of 10, I think you choose safety without power. Just because if you don't choose that and then you end up going home, I would never be able to live that down. Like in my own head, I would just never forgive myself for doing that because you had that opportunity and you chose not to take it. So, yeah, I think most of the time, I think that's the right way to go. And Saul ends up giving that advantage to Rachel, who is the one person not from Tuku, who was the easy vote that week. And I mean, I would say, like, we don't know this for sure, but it certainly seems like she was probably gonna go home
Yeah.
if she didn't save herself there. So I will say, just in general, as much as I really like Rachel and I'm glad that she didn't go home, and I think it certainly made this episode more exciting. I again, I mean, to kind of go back to my rant from 5 minutes ago, I just that seemed too powerful. I don't know. That seemed like almost too convenient that that was an option that just saved her. So I don't know. I wish that she had to kind of do something in order to save herself. I think that would have been so impressive, and that would have really done wonders for her game. And I mean, like that would have been an incredible move. She had been able to say that she saved herself, even if she had something like just a vote blocker and was able to use that strategically and save herself and just get like Kyle on her side or something, and been able to turn the vote around just using something like that. But to just get safety and then be saved, I'm glad for her, but I wish that that hadn't necessarily been an option.
Yeah, it definitely felt like, wow, that like they knew to play this at this
Yeah.
moment because they wanted everyone on God or on Tuku to turn on themselves, and that kind of it did feel like, okay, was this planned? But obviously things have to happen like in the season, like they probably didn't totally expect for this to be the case, that this is going to be a scenario of this getting played during, but it did seem convenient in that sense.
Yeah. Well, after Rachel was saved, then the Tuku Five had to turn against each other. and we got a live tribal where they were all whispering to each other, and it seemed like the vote was either going to be Tiana or Gabe. They were both trying to really get the numbers on their side to get the other one out. I kind of thought that it was going in the direction of Gabe going home, to be perfectly honest with you, because it certainly seemed like Kyle was fully Team Tiana there. And I thought they might have been able to get Caroline on their side. And then Caroline, I thought, could have gotten Sue to go along with her just because those two were so close. So I really kind of thought it was going in that direction, but then it turns out that no, that even Kyle voted for Tiana. So, it seemed like we probably missed maybe the end of that where that became the option there. And Tiana ended up getting voted out, and we got another great reaction. Very
Yeah.
emotional reaction to that vote out from Tiana there. And again, I understood it because she just missed out on the jury. And it was because of, who knows what would have happened if everybody had gone to tribal. She might have still gotten voted out. But it was because in large part because of a twist that she ended up leaving. Two twists, really.
I know.
So, do you think that that was the right move to get Tiana out there?
I think in that moment also I was like not totally sure. I thought that Gabe was going to be the one there, but I felt like because of the conversations that Gabe was talking to Sue, like whispering to Sue and whispering to Caroline, it seemed like maybe that they were closer
Mhm.
than Caroline and Sue were than they were with Tiana. So I think it makes sense there in that moment. I felt bad for Tiana as well. I feel like because like also and when they were both or when they were showing Tiana before we went to tribal, I think they were purposely showing us like her being stressed out and that kind of stuff. So I was like, wait, what's gonna happen? Like I always knew we obviously knew Soul had the power, so I knew it had to be someone turning like they had to be turning on each other. But I didn't know then it was gonna be Tiana because and then it makes sense because they were showing her so much being like, oh
Yeah.
my god, like what's gonna happen here? Obviously, we knew that they were going to have to turn on themselves. Didn't mean we didn't know exactly what that meant in that moment, but obviously ended up being Tiana. So I think it just has to happen. Like it's the game, and it's obviously sad for her and not having her make the jury, but it it's just the way it works.
Yeah. That's the game.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for next week. It seems like hopefully we finally get just a normal merge vote, and I will be very interested to see how the dynamics shift and change during next this episode. So we will catch up with that next week. But let's move on to the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. So this is our first time covering Real Houses of Salt Lake City on the pod. So Molly, what are your overall thoughts on the show? I know this is your first time really watching a full season of the show. We watched the finale of season 4, which is the crazy
Mhm.
reality Von tease of it all.
Yeah.
But what were your thoughts on this show and the season so far?
I think it's been really good. There's a lot of different dynamics throughout, which I was trying to wrap my head around everything. I was like, oh my God, so many people in so many different places and relationships and friendships and drama and all that kind of stuff, which obviously makes for a good show. But I think like overall, it's been a good season. I know you've had more experience in watching Salt Lake City, so you can speak to more compared to other seasons, but I think this is a really good season.
It's been great. No, I mean, Salt Lake City always delivers. Season 3 was probably like the weakest season of Salt Lake, but even that has some very iconic moments from it, like Heather's Black Eye. And this season's been fantastic, though. I think Bronwyn has been a great addition to the group. And I think a lot of people, when Monica wasn't coming back, were a little bit concerned that that would mean that a lot of the drama, would be kind of let out of the balloon a little bit because last season a lot of that revolved around Monica. But this cast, I mean, we should have known that this cast is an all-star group. I mean, you got Heather, Whitney, Meredith, Lisa. Like it's a great group, and so even without Bronwyn, I think it still would have been very strong. But with Bronwyn being such a good addition, I don't even miss Monica. Like I forget that she's not there a lot of times, to be honest with you. Like I just think, yeah, Salt Lake City has been stellar this season.
Yeah.
So what are some of your highlights from the first 6 episodes? We'll kind of focus on the seventh, the most recent one, but since we
Yeah.
haven't covered it yet, what are some of the highlights for you from the first 6?
Yeah, well, it was really great to see. I think Meredith, you were mentioning this to me before I even started, that Meredith was talking about getting a bat mitzvah and like Jewish side of things, which I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we don't get to see that representation in reality TV of like Jewish people are not usually shown like that, or just in general in TV. So I think it was nice that we got to see Meredith with like the rabbi and her practicing Hebrew and having that moment. I appreciated seeing that in the show also because usually you would think Salt Lake City would be like all the Christian Mormon people. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see that there's diversity in it, and I really like seeing her and that side of it. It wasn't drama obviously, but it was like the wholesome content.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say just in terms of like funny moments, I think from episode 6, one of the funniest moments probably in Salt Lake City history to me was Mary on after her fight with Heather, sitting on the couch with Angie's daughter and her friend, and just like dishing on all the drama to the kids. And they were just like, lady, who are you? Why are you
Yeah,
talking to me? Like that was so funny to me. And just like then I mean that same episode, like Mary getting Jared confused with Brittany's new guy that she brought, Aaron, I think,
that was so good.
and just being fully convinced that that was Jared Osmond. And even when Brittany can like corrected her, she still went to Meredith and was like, "No, that's Jared." So
Yeah.
that
And then
was
then
great.
Meredith had to look him up and be like, "Oh, this is actually not like
Yeah,
they're not the same person."
it
And then it
kind
was funny.
of
Then
looked like a little.
Jared, yeah, they do look similar because then when Jared came in and you saw Mary's reaction, she's like, "Oh," she's like, "Are they the same? I still don't know."
Yeah, no, that was great.
That
So,
was good.
and yeah, and the first episode was fantastic too. Even I mean, that
Yeah,
whole episode was just the first party, which I don't think we've ever seen that before on
no,
Housewives. So
that was great.
that was great. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of other moments too, but yeah, fantastic season thus far. But let's get into episode 7. So we begin the episode on a to be continued, picking up at Andrew's anniversary party, and Whitney and Lisa are still fighting over Whitney confronting Lisa and alleging that she was the one who fed the information about Whitney's company, jewelry company, to the blogs, and getting that story out there that Whitney's copying from Alibaba, or as Meredith would say, Alibaba. And and Lisa is adamantly denying it and threatening to sue and get one of her many attorneys on speed dial. And then their husbands get involved as well. Justin and John start fighting. It's all just chaos. Whose side are you on, would you say, between Whitney and Lisa?
Yeah, this stuff is crazy. Like every episode, there's something new coming in, and then there's all the fighting and drama. Lisa's just always raising her voice, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot. But I honestly, it's so I don't even know. Like at this point, like I don't know whose side I'm totally on because I feel bad for Whitney and that she's having to deal with like the stuff that she thinks Lisa is doing. And then Lisa's like, why do you think I'm doing this? But then Whitney has some proof in some regards that it is her. And then Lisa's feeling defensive. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff there that I just want to hear more, to be honest. I'm like, at this moment in time, I don't even know if I have a specific side. I'm just like, what is going on here? And is this going to get solved? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do like. I think I'm mostly probably Team Lisa in this, just because I do think that Whitney should give her the benefit of the doubt. Because she doesn't, other than, I mean, this podcaster, honestly, it's Up and Adam, has, a pop culture reality TV podcast that was on the phone with Whitney in the car and basically confirmed it was Lisa, saying, they have a a tequila line. Like, I'm not gonna say a name, but they're the one with the tequila line. Like, well, you might as well just say the name and put a plain banner with the name. Like, I mean, what? But so I mean, I understand that Whitney probably has felt like this is Lisa's MO, and like it fits, it makes sense to be Lisa. And so when you have somebody confirm that to you, then you just kind of believe it to be true. But I do think that she should have confronted Lisa with a little bit more, giving her a chance to either like explain herself or defend herself or something without just kind of like from the jump accusing Lisa and being like, I know it's you, and not really giving her an opportunity to have a rebuttal there. Like it seemed like she had her mind made up basically. So I get both sides, but I do think that Whitney could have handled it a little bit differently and probably given the chance for them to kind of like talk it out rather than just from the jump making it this huge argument, which maybe is what what Whitney was going for. She knows what makes good reality TV at this point. They're 5 seasons in, so I mean that probably was very intentional. But
Yeah. And at Angie's party where everyone is. So
yeah, exactly. I mean,
everyone
that's the
can hear
time.
them. Yeah.
That's the time to do it. But what is another big plot point that we've had this season is a newbie or new friend of the cast, Brittany, and her relationship with Jared Osmond. What are your thoughts on this roller coaster up and down of a relationship?
Well, I think that it's not really a relationship if he's still on the apps and not trying to show her on any social media or even in public when she's like, "Oh, we're walking on the street," and he takes his hand away from me. If there's a girl walking by, like that doesn't sound healthy in any way. So I think obviously also she said they broke up like 16 times. Like I don't think this is healthy by any means, and I think they should not be in this relationship. And it seems that Brittany's not in the best headspace over just in general. It doesn't seem like she likes being alone. The fact that she brought Aaron, the other guy, the one that looks like Jared, to the party as a plus one, and people were like, "Oh, hey, Jared," like how Mary, like, "Oh, hey, Jared," like because she didn't know she already had some new guy on her roster. But I think in general, like it's just not a good relationship, and it's like 0 to 100, but both ways. It's like either they're like terrible and then it's like, oh, we can't be together, or then they're like, oh my gosh, I love you, we're best friends. Like that's not healthy.
Yeah, I think that Brittany just like romanticizes this relationship and just like
Yeah.
wants it to work so badly. And I don't know, maybe to some degree it's because he's an Osmond and she wants to be able to say she's doing an Osmond. But it seems like she's kind of ruined her relationship with her kids because of either this relationship or just kind of relationships in the past that she may have had. And that's really sad. And I just think that she's so desperate to be with somebody that she doesn't even care how toxic it is. And that's really sad to see. And I think that she needs to, hopefully get some sort of help to have her self-esteem grow and not be willing to accept a relationship like this. So I hope that that's an arc we see from her in the future. I would love to see that. But another plot point that we have here is Heather and Angie's argument. Now, it seems like Angie confronts Heather and basically saying that it seems like Heather's taking Lisa's side in Angie and Lisa's argument that we saw start earlier in the season. And it seems like Heather's not is holding Angie to a different standard, is what Angie is saying. That she feels like Heather does not hold Lisa accountable for what she does, but she holds Angie accountable for everything that she does. So, do you see that? Do you think that Heather has different standards, or should Lisa is Heather right to be kind of backing Lisa in this argument?
I think obviously like it's hard to exactly compare it. I think in a sense that there's different scenarios and everything, but their friendship just might not be to the same level as what she was hoping it would be, and, like, that's what she's basing this off of, and, like, seeing it that she's backing up like, I think she's just jealous is what it comes down to in a way too, is, like, "Why weren't you there for me like that?" Or, like, all those things that it's just so many layers that could be like, that are more in it that we're not it's not really being surfaced, like, discussed in that way, but I think that's, like, the deeper level of it.
Yeah, and I think we have to realize that Angie is newer to the show. She came in season three, whereas most of the other girls are OGs. But Heather and Angie have known each other since high school. Like, I don't know that they were necessarily good friends. It doesn't seem like they were necessarily, but they've known each other for a very, very, very long time. So I think to a certain extent that's probably playing into this too, where Angie feels like I've known you longer than any of these girls. Like, they may have been on the show longer than me, but in reality, I've known you longer. So I think that Angie feels like Heather should have some loyalty towards her because of that. Whereas Heather feels like, well, I've been in this situation with Lisa longer than I've been in this with you. So, I guess that's kind of probably where there's a little bit of a disconnect as well. But yeah, so we end this episode with Bronwyn and Heather having their big confrontation because they've been kind of on different pages this whole season. Heather doesn't get a good vibe from Bronwyn. She feels like she reminds her a little bit of Jen Shaw, a little bit of Monica, where she has comes in with very strong feelings, and Heather has in the past been blindly loyal to these type of girls, and it's always been her in the past, and they've come to betray her, and she's trying to grow, trying to get out of that pattern, and she feels like getting close to Bronwyn would be falling right back into that same trap. Now, Bronwyn, on the other hand, feels like Heather's stirring the pot just as much as Bronwyn has this entire season, and Bronwyn is willing to take some accountability for that and admit to that, whereas Heather is not able to apologize for anything, not able to see that, they're kind of doing the same thing in a certain way. And Bronwyn ends up not inviting Heather on this upcoming cast trip to Palm Springs because of that. And it's kind of crazy that Bronwyn, the newbie, is hosting the first cast trip. That
Yeah.
is unheard of. I mean, there are cast members who were on for 4 or 5 seasons and never get to host a trip. So
Wow.
that's kind of crazy. But, anyways, do you think that Bronwyn, whose side are you on in this situation? And do you think that Bronwyn should have invited Heather on this trip or not?
Yeah, well, it is crazy to hear that Bronwyn's already hosting it and other people haven't had, like, no, her first season, but I think it's interesting because obviously, like you're saying, we've said this in the past of, like, a cast trip shouldn't be, like, this exclusive thing. If everyone in the cast, like, is in the cast, they should all get to go. So, that side of it, I'm like, "Okay, like, why can't Heather just join?" But then I also can see Bronwyn's point and why she wouldn't want Heather there. And if they don't get along at all, like, it's Bronwyn's trip, like, she wants to try to have a fun trip. She doesn't want someone there who doesn't like her. So, in that sense, like, obviously, then, yeah, it makes sense why she wouldn't want her there. But I don't know. So I think I kind of am more on Bronwyn's side here, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I do see both sides. I really, really like Bronwyn. I think she's a fantastic housewife so far. I don't love when cast members, I mean, honestly, especially brand new housewives, feel like they have casting control and can decide who goes on the trips and who doesn't. We want everybody there. It's better show when everybody's there rather than when only certain girls get to go, certain ones don't. So I do, in that sense, think that Bronwyn should have invited Heather regardless. On the other hand, it did kind of seem like she was trying to give Heather opportunities to apologize, give Heather opportunities to, allow her to invite her, and Heather just kind of refused to do it. And I do think that Bronwyn is right, and I like the fact that she's willing to own the fact that when she's being messy, she's willing to own when she's, stirring the pot a little bit. Whereas Heather feels a little bit righteous, a little bit, like she's not willing to admit those things when she does it. And I think that in that sense, Bronwyn probably won the argument. But I think that I could see Bronwyn in the future when she's not a newbie, probably getting a little bit too big for her britches and, continuing to think that she can cut people out of trips or, do things like that. And if we see that more often from Bronwyn, then I'm going to start to not be able to be on her side anymore. So we'll see. But so far, I like her, and yeah, we'll see what
And
happens.
where does she get all of her outfits from?
Oh my god!
Because
Oh,
all every single of her like individual interviews, like I'm like, what is she wearing? And like how does she get these outfits?
it feels very Selling Sunset to me, which,
Yeah.
like, in a way, I like, but in a way, I hope that that doesn't become a thing of like everybody trying to outdo her, because that can then feel very unnatural, very unreal, and that's where kind of Selling Sunset got to that point where Christine started that, and then everybody copied her. But yeah,
I
there
don't
are
think anyone
outfits.
can get to Bronwyn's level though. She's
No, I
wearing
think
like
that's a different level.
wings. Like
It's a different level, yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, we will continue to follow this season. So I'm excited. It's Salt Lake City's great. So we will continue to follow that and Survivor as well the rest of the season. So we will be back next week, and be sure to follow us at Let's Chat Reality on social media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we will chat with you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.